All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg, and yeah, a little bit of a later start than I had planned, and big reason for that is didn't get the guest ultimately that we had scheduled for today's program. I was disappointed to not get, or not to get, so we don't split that infinitive, not to get Alex Bastani. He's running for lieutenant governor, and I'm going to get into what exactly happened, why that interview fell through. I'm, again, disappointed. It's not going to be about bashing Bastani at all. I understand his position, but I have a position too. And I will just say this, based on what I've read and seen, he is the best choice for that position, lieutenant governor. Virginia does off-year elections. And so they go right after the presidential election. They go right into it. So 25, 29, et cetera, will be when they have their big state elections for governor, lieutenant governor, et cetera. I was excited to have Bastani on. He reached out to me, not to be on Halitics, but because of my previous involvement with Our Revolution, which I'm also going to talk about today, a little bit of that organization, not my involvement with them, but we'll talk about Our Revolution briefly. But you know, once he reached out to me, I said, hey, I'm not with them anymore, but I'd love to interview you. And he said, sure, I'll do it. And I looked at his website, and we'll show the cover of it, and it was impressive. In fact, I've discussed how he centers issues rather than fluff, rather than, you know, I'm a lifelong Virginian or something like that. But he talks about the very specific policies that he will pursue. And that's what we should be demanding. So all of that looked really good, and I was hoping to speak to him about his policies, his plans to make the Commonwealth a better place, and you know, address wages, address building good jobs, having a more. And there's a little gnat flying around. Got some gnats in this house. Very frustrating. So a lot to talk about with Bastani. Also, sprawl. Sprawl is a big problem in Northern Virginia. The traffic is a disaster. It's hard to find affordable housing. People are moving further and further away from the district, which is the primary job center, although there are many job centers in Northern Virginia. So there were a lot of really, what I think to be fruitful conversation to be had, fruitful topics for a great conversation with Alex Bastani. But when it all foundered when I said to him, hey, you know, just so you know, because there's no surprises. This isn't about gotchas. Now, if I was trying to do a gotcha, you know, I bird dog people. I did that to David Trone, former Congress member, about Medicare for all. He had a town hall, and he wasn't ready for that question. And, you know, we bird dog him. And I've done that to a lot of people. Van Hollen, Raskin, we played, I think, did I ever get the clip? Maybe I didn't get that clip. But that wasn't the point. You know, I want to have a productive conversation with people. And I'm not going to say, well, you know, not going to hide from them what I'm going to ask them. At the same time, I'm also not going to stay off certain topics. So, you know, unless there's a good reason, you know, there might be a good reason. So I mentioned to Mr. Bastani, Alex Bastani, this morning, because we were getting ready, right? And I had put together a little thumbnail for the program too, which I will share with you. I wanted to get his approval, but I also wanted him to know, hey, I'm going to talk about Gaza. I always do, except when there's a ceasefire, except when the killing isn't going on. And this is news, right? So Gaza rescuers say 40 mostly displaced people killed in Israeli strikes. And you can even see there's Netanyahu with his military helmet on, I guess trying to convince everyone that he's some kind of a warrior or something rather than just a mass murderer, just a killer, a genocider. But 40 more people dead. And I'm going to talk about that. That's our government. I'm going to talk about that in every program as long as it continues. So 40 more killed. And I'm not sure if they all were killed yesterday, even going by Gaza time. It seems like there were some attacks. I believe some of the strikes that led to those 40 deaths included this morning, were this morning. So I'm not sure, but I that was the number I got from various sites. So including there's AFP, Agence France Presse, the French press agency. So we'll go with the 40 and maybe we'll update it tomorrow. And I just to round out the discussion of the casualty or not the casualties, because there's, thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands, over 100,000 confirmed injuries caused by Israel, but we just focus more on the deaths. But just to get that death number up right now from the latest number, and I try to do it by day. So on Thursday, I would talk about how many were killed through Wednesday. But obviously, I'm at the whim of the media that's covering these atrocities. So we have with the 40 more dead, 51,065 identified Gazans killed since October 7. Don't forget, by the way, I always urge you, please click subscribe. Click like too, but the best thing for me, somebody even asked me, they reached out, hey, are you monetizing yet? And I'm like, no, I'm not monetizing. I get it. I think it's 500. I'm not certain about that. The policies are very, very opaque at Google, at least as far as I haven't seen them. Maybe they're more easy to find than I know about, but as far as I understand, you get 500 subscribers. They'll start sending you checks every month, but they'll be small, right? Could even be in the cents, right? 50 cents, I guess. I don't really know how that works. Or maybe they don't send it unless you get up to $10. They just hold it till you get, I don't know. But I'd like to know. I'd love to know, but I won't know until at least I get to whatever that magic number is, hopefully soon. But it's going to be a while. So I said, hey, I'm not at 500 yet, so I'm not getting money, and I'm not going to ask, I will never ask listeners to contribute, nor will I go, I mean, I guess I could find sponsors. People want to sponsor, if there's a business or something that I like that's local, and you listen, you say, hey, I really like your program, how I'd like you to, I might consider, giving you a readout, but that's not something I'm actively seeking whatsoever. And again, I'm not going to ask listeners ever to send me money. So from March 18 through April 16, since Trump has been in office and the genocide has been continuing, we see 1,565 Gazans killed. And it could be 1,000 children. I don't know. We know it's a majority of women and children. We don't know quite how many. I told Bastani, I said, hey, I'm going to talk about this first thing I always do. I center it. That's my focus. Do you want to weigh in? So he said he didn't want to because it's not a state issue. And I thought that's a fair answer, right? I don't need to ask him about that because it's a national issue. If he was running for Congress, obviously there'd be no way to avoid a conversation. It wouldn't be the entirety of it. We could focus on other issues, but I would ask him his position on funding Israel's genocide. And either answer or don't. You refuse to say, I can't do anything about that. I can only ask you the question. And but when he said, hey, I don't want to comment on Israel and Gaza because it's not germane, it's not pertinent to what I'm trying to do in my lieutenant governor's race, which doesn't, directly impact. It's the state of Virginia. We don't have a military budget. And I thought, okay, again, fair. But then I thought a little bit more about it. And I thought, when I think a lot about this, states are involved, right? States are absolutely 100% involved. For example, in Maryland, and I've talked about that on this program, and I've also posted in Halitics, in Maryland, we have what is called the Maryland Israeli Development Center. And that center is a place where Israeli companies are cajoled or urged or importuned to do business, to come to Maryland and open up an office, perhaps open up some type of plant, some type of production facility. And it's, great for Maryland, I guess, because they get the jobs. But we're spending state money to entice Israel and Israeli companies to come here. And some of those companies are making weapons of death. It would be akin during World War II or before, 1939 or something, to urging UFA, the German filmmaker, to come and you say, well, they're a filmmaker. They're not making, Zyklon B, which wasn't manufactured for a few more years, but they're not making weapons to kill Jews or to bomb the UK or what have you. They're just making movies, except they're making propaganda films that are designed to turn Germans into Jew haters and to condemn Jews and to make it a very, very miserable place for Jews. So no, you don't develop business with Nazi Germany in 1939 or 41 or what have you, and you shouldn't do the same with Israel. So I think it is a state issue. It certainly is in Maryland. I looked into Virginia. I thought, well, maybe there's nothing in Virginia. I was trying to find out because this is such an important, it's a critical moral question. It's a moral challenge to our time and to every leader, every political leader. Where do you stand on Israel? Where do you stand on Gaza? Where do you stand on genocide? And I get it. You're running for dog catcher? Probably doesn't matter. You're running for mayor of a small town? Maybe it doesn't matter. But at some point, it begins to matter. Again, it's not the most important thing. I certainly wasn't planning to focus on it solely. But yeah, I'm going to ask you about it if it's pertinent to your job. So, before we get into it, let me just say that I found this bill. Okay, so I looked and I want to find out, hey, is this relevant or not? If you're running for lieutenant governor, one of the primary job description of the lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia, or the Commonwealth, they call themselves, either way, the primary job responsibility of the lieutenant governor in Virginia is to preside over the Senate, just like the vice president of the United States does. And that means if there's a tie, then the deciding vote is cast by the lieutenant governor in Virginia in the Senate. So this bill was introduced this year, in February, in fact. And I believe, I'm not certain, but I believe, and there's a little net I'm trying to get, I believe that bill was, I believe they're still open, the Virginia Senate, maybe not. So the bill, the title, Reaffirming the Commonwealth's Support and Commitment to the State of Israel and its Supporters. Partisan bill, Republican 1-0. I don't know what that 0 means. I guess it means there's one sponsor from the Republican side, and it says Stas introduced left in rule. So I don't know whether it was ever, what happened to it. I'm going to assume it didn't make it. But still, it was being debated. It was introduced into the Virginia Senate this year. So it's absolutely a state issue. And so I wrote him. I said, hey, what's your position? Did you take a position on this bill? Reaffirming the Commonwealth's support and commitment to the state of Israel and supporters. It's a resolution. It doesn't have any real meaning. But you know what? If you're a Palestinian in Virginia, it has meaning. It means that your state is saying, we don't believe that your homeland should continue to exist. We don't believe the people from your homeland should continue to survive. It's a really important symbolic bill. So I wanted to know, hey, where'd you stand on that? Do you have a position? And I wrote that, and he said, my campaign, I don't think I should appear in your program. I'm here to discuss economics. And so, sorry. And I'm paraphrasing, and I'm not going to put the emails up, and it wasn't contentious, and I respect the guy, and he has every right to not come on this program. But I think it's such a lost opportunity, more for him, frankly, than for me. Not even that this video gets a whole lot of views, because we don't get a lot of views, but he could share it. But it's a lost opportunity to talk to a progressive. It's a lost opportunity to have a challenging back and forth. Not that I would be challenging him particularly, but I would believe an intellectually challenging back and forth with someone who's probably on the left side of most issues. And that is so unfortunate. Now, I take the view, unlike so many other hosts, that a interview, these interviews, they're not that big a deal, honestly. I mean, I know if you're for the candidate, they might be, right? Didn't Bill Clinton and save his presidential aspirations because he went on 60 Minutes and he presented himself in a certain way and people thought, oh, he did a great job on 60 Minutes. So yeah, it can mean a lot. But I don't think for viewers of interviews, you often learn that much because these politicians are generally pretty slick and they present themselves in a certain way and they do their darndest to convey a certain, to present themselves in a way that you will find appealing and attractive. That doesn't mean that's who they are. That only tells you if they're a good actor. That's about it. That's as far as it goes. So, I don't know that they're so valuable. And I care much more about votes than anything else by a ton. But I would love to interview a guy running for lieutenant governor. I put together this really, really nice thumbnail, I thought, for the program. Because I like what Alex Bastani had to say. Fighting for the forgotten, 100%. I'm a big believer that we need to take the side of the underdog at every opportunity. Yes, universal health care. I told you, this guy, he looks really good. Universal health care, free state college, $20 minimum wage, and right to work. Really specific. He's a union guy. So I don't get this. Why wouldn't you talk about this bill in Virginia that centers Israel? I don't understand that. I mean, I do. Okay, I do understand it. Because there's this fear. We can't alienate anybody if we don't have to. We can't alienate Israel supporters. And plus which, they're rich, many of them. They're wealthy donors. And I don't want to lose them. I don't want to lose Jewish people who are, as in the words of, very wise words of somebody, I never heard this expression, but now I've heard it, progressive on everything but Israel. We don't want to lose those people. I get that. I really, really understand that. I understand that view. But but that said, when you run for office, when you take bold positions, when you speak your mind, I don't know, maybe he's a staunch Israel supporter. It's possible. I don't know. He never clarified. I looked it up online. I couldn't find anything. Is there a possibility that he's getting some money? I have no idea, from some pro-Israel group or maybe a pro-Palestine. I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't state your position on a purely symbolic representational bill. We stand with Israel or we don't. We support Israel and its supporters or we don't. Now, I do get it. I keep saying I don't get it because for me as an individual, I would welcome the opportunity if I'm running for office to present my views on Israel. I believe that they're more popular, especially among Democratic voters. I believe that I would be helping myself win election by speaking out against our support for Israel. But there's a terrible, terrible threat hanging over the heads of everyone. And this is assuming maybe he supports Israel. Maybe he's a big staunch Israel supporter, and he feels like it won't go over well in the primary. We know that a lot of candidates who have been too pro-Israel have lost elections. For example, Kamala. She may well, there's certainly a very persuasive argument that she didn't get elected president because she wouldn't break with Bibi and she wouldn't say, no, I don't support genocide. That may well have cost her the election. So maybe I'm reduced purely to speculation here. But the big fear, I think, among those Democrats who actually don't agree with Israel, don't believe we should be funding Israel, their big fear is that AIPAC AIPAC supporters will put a big, heavy thumb on the scale of at least one opponent and will also go after them aggressively. And they won't. They don't necessarily do it on this issue, right? They don't say, oh, you can't vote for Donna Edwards because she thinks we shouldn't be funding genocide. They won't say it like that. They might try to accuse her, depending on who's in the race, depending on the jurisdiction, the district, like if it's Westchester and there's a lot of wealthy Jewish voters, then they might say, well, Jamal Bowman is anti-Semitic. But you're not going to do that to Cori Bush in St. Louis, where you have a mostly black or predominantly African-American voting base in her congressional district. Instead, you'll go after Cori Bush if you're AIPAC, which you will do because she's been pretty outspoken against the genocide. What you will do is you'll say she's anti-labor, she's anti-union, she voted against the unions on some bill that actually the unions had said, go ahead and vote against it. It was an infrastructure bill. There was some money in it for building and construction, and she voted against it because it wasn't good enough. It wasn't strong enough. And then some of the union leaders, the union bosses, probably with strong pressure from Democratic establishment types in the St. Louis Democratic Party, went after her and said, oh, she betrayed us. She stabbed us in the back. She didn't vote for some infrastructure bill, which really wasn't good enough to begin with. But they're not going to say that in the ad. So I think if you're Bastani, you say, I'm going to keep my head down. I don't know. I have no idea. But if you're Bastani and you are looking with absolute horror at what Israel's doing, but you say, you know, I can't really say anything because then AIPAC will come after me. And I understand that. I think it's wrong. I think it's misguided. I don't think the Democratic Party should view Israel and support for Israel as a third rail, something that they can't talk about, something that they can't criticize, that they can't criticize Israel. Now, I'm going to show my thumbnail because I changed it in light of the issue with our guest who wouldn't join me. And I hope you can read it. I thought it was kind of clear. It's the Israel's on the left, equals, with the two purple or magenta horizontal lines, equals. And then there's like a picture of that third rail there, right? The third rail of the train, and its Democratic Express is coming to run over you if you criticize Israel. And then, you know, so I don't know if people got that, but I thought it was kind of clear. So I went with it. But so I think the Democrats make a terrible mistake if they're not going to go after Israel, if they're not going to challenge Israel. And it seems like many won't do so. Now, this is an old story. This is not like a new thing where Democrats, many are just trying to stay away from the topic and not bring it up if they can avoid it. And I understand in Congress you can't, you have to, so they do. But otherwise, in Maryland, you know, in Montgomery County, we have a very progressive on most issues county executive, but he will not take on Israel. He will not say, no, I'm not going to fund that Maryland-Israel Development Center. And it's a terrible thing. So back in 2020, I found this article because I was looking up third rail. The Democrat parties, that's interesting. Arlen would have a fit. It should be the Democratic. I agree with that. It should be the Democratic parties. Third rail, Democratic is the adjective, but whatever. You know, I know this was sort of Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh made a lot of hay in his day calling it the Democrat Party and pissing people off. And it is obnoxious. I mean, the guy was a complete jerk. No question about it. Horrible person, did a lot of harm. Don't forget, I don't do harm. Click like, click subscribe. Hope you'll, you know, be part of Halitics. So there's your little like button. I've already shown you the subscribe. And don't forget also to join Halitics on Facebook, which is where I am broadcasting this, among other places. I'm certainly glad to be able to be on YouTube, which is my favorite. Honestly, my favorite platform is YouTube, even though they barred me. I do in general, or suspended me. I hope they don't again. I don't want to say too many nice things about them if they're going to take me on and hurt me like they did. But why don't I see my FB? Got to put my FB GIF here for them as well. I guess I don't have it in this scene. Just a little behind the scenes stuff. I've got to put that image. There's my FB GIF, which isn't in there. So I'm going to put my FB GIF. I'm going to slide it down and I'm going to fade over. So yeah, want more? Please do join Halitics on Facebook. So third rail, Israel, and what Laura Regan was saying, Lori Regan, not Laura, Lori Regan was saying in that article is that Democrats won't say they care about Israel. Democrats are afraid their third rail is showing support for Israel. I don't think that was ever the case, certainly not for New York Democrats, which is where New York is where Lori Regan was writing. She's associate, I don't know which, some media, some newspaper, I believe, up there, or some group in New York. So 1920, this is, or 2020, not 19, maybe in 1920, probably not. In 2020, Lori Regan wrote, the Democratic, see there she calls it the Democratic Party, not the Democrat Party. The Democratic Party is increasingly tolerant of voices opposed to Israel's existence. I'm astonished by that. I don't believe there's one voice that I've heard in the Democratic Party that's opposed to Israel's existence. Would you say Rashida Tlaib? I think she's even said she believes Israel has the right to exist, just not as an apartheid state. Of course, some would say, well, then if it's not an apartheid state, it's not Israel, because there wouldn't be a majority of Jews and it would no longer be a Jewish state. Okay, well, then Israel's not a Jewish state. Gee, too bad, so sad. But maybe we shouldn't have theocracies. I'm not a big believer in those. I think maybe most people who are Democratic, most people in the Democratic Party, presumably who are Democrats and believe in democracy, might well say, yeah, I don't believe in a theocracy, which was what Israel is. But the Democrat Party is clearly not tolerant of voices that are opposed to Israel's existence. What they are intolerant of are voices that support Palestinian existence. So you can barely what, 15 out of 47 Democratic senators said we shouldn't fund the genocide. So the intolerance is all on the side of those, who the intolerance is of anyone who's pro-life, who's pro-Palestinian life. That's what the intolerance is in the Democratic Party. And tragically, my guest didn't want to come on and express his views on whether the Commonwealth of Virginia should support Israel in a resolution. And I'm, again, really, really disappointed. Now, would it keep me from voting for him? In this case, it might. Well, look, I've been turned against the Democratic Party. But I also will say, I center, as does apparently Alex Bastani, I center economic issues, and which I believe this is, by the way, because, he said to me, or he emailed me, hey, this is about economics. I want to discuss economics. And I would say, well, but the U.S. is spending billions of dollars of taxpayer money on Israel, including a lot of Virginia money. That money could probably be much better spent on Virginia infrastructure, jobs for Virginians, the economy in Virginia, don't you think? I mean, I didn't say don't you think, but I was thinking that, and I'm sure he, thought, well, there's a don't you think in there. But, so I think it is an economic matter, right? No question. But look, you're for Medicare for all. You're for raising the minimum wage in Virginia. You're for, I presume, sustainable communities, union jobs. He is a union organizer. Yeah. I think a union lawyer, I believe. Yeah, I'll still support you, I guess. I mean, it's very, very tough. Now, if you're pro-genocide, I can't really support you. Then I won't support you. That to me is like the but even there, like with Kamala, I said, hey, if she had just thrown me a bone during the run up to the 2024 election, if she had just said, yeah, I will cut Israel off if they don't stop killing Gazans. If she had just said that, I would have voted for her. But she also you know, it was easy for me not to vote for her because she wasn't good on any issues. She wasn't for Medicare for all. She wasn't for reducing our carbon footprint, reducing our fossil fuel consumption, reducing our fossil fuel production. She wasn't for any of that. So it was easy for me to say, hey, she's not good on anything, because she wasn't. If she had been good on some issues, the way Bastani is clearly good on some issues, then I think it would have been a tougher call for me to say, don't vote for her. But she made it easy because she was bad on everything. Why, from a purely political viewpoint, from a political standpoint, expressing a critical position of Israel, showing support for Palestine is actually good politics at this point. Except for the risk, a real risk, but a risk. You know, I think it's an overblown risk. I think it's exaggerated, but we've seen effectually that in some cases it's overblown, other cases no. That AIPAC has been able to absolutely win elections. They got Glenn Ivey elected to Congress in Maryland. They got Sarah Elfreth. She was the candidate, the AIPAC candidate in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, for Congress. She won. They were a very big reason that Nina Turner lost in her race to be the Congress member there from replacing Marcia Fudge to be the Congress member in northeastern Ohio from Cuyahoga County and Akron. She lost that race to basically a functionary, a Democratic apparatchik, somebody who was supported by AIPAC, which spent quite a bit of money to turn out anti-Palestine voters, pro-Jewish voters, Jewish voters, pro-Israel voters, and also who spent a lot of money amplifying harshly critical, I think perfectly fair, but harshly critical comments by Nina Turner of Joe Biden. And so, that wouldn't have happened if Nina Turner had done everything she did, except she'd been critical of Joe Biden, just as critical as she was, but she hadn't spoken out against the Israeli occupation and apartheid, and hadn't spoken sympathetically of Palestinians. If she did everything but that, she might well have won, and AIPAC would have stayed out of that race. So it's tough. It's tough. I get the concern, but look at this. My response to that would be take it head on, go after them, say, hey, I know I'm taking a risk here. I know that these billionaires are going to come after me with guns blazing. I know they're going to make crap up about me, but this issue is too important, and they're killers, they're murderers, they're genociders, they're Nazis. So I'm going to speak out against them. I'm going to speak out against our support for the Israeli occupation and killing and murders. I'm going to speak out against their supporters. I'm not going to placate them or pretend it's not really happening. And I think that's the better, not only the thing it's morally justified, but I think you win that way. Look at this. Danger zone, collapsing support for Israel among Democrats. So our guest, our putative guest, Alex Bastani, running for lieutenant governor in the Democratic primary against a number of candidates. How do you stand out in that crowd? You don't have a ton of money. Take a bold position. Go out there and say, no, we should not be expressing support for Israel. We should be expressing support for Palestinians, for Palestine. Because why? Because it's the right thing to do. But because from a political standpoint, behind the scenes, you're saying, hey, you know what? This could work. This could work. So from INSS, which is a, I think it's a publication of the Tel Aviv University there in Israel, they're reporting, and this is this year. This is not some moldy oldie. This is from this year. So what are they reporting here? The partisan divide over Israel in U.S. opinion has reached unprecedented levels. According to a benchmark, let me just get that all on there. According to a benchmark survey released earlier in March, only 1/3 of Democrats, 1/3, have a favorable view of Israel. And we know that more Democrats prefer Gaza. So you should, if you want to win, if you're looking at it from a standpoint of appealing to voters, you should say, hey, yeah, I'm horrified by Israel. I'm disgusted by what Israel's doing. I wish they would stop it. And you've got, by the way, got a caller. I'm going to get to you in just a sec, caller. I absolutely promise. Thank you so much for calling in. But I just wanted to throw this out there just to show this to you. This isn't like a two-person race. I get it. Maybe if you're in a race with somebody, one person, and you're afraid you're going to alienate voters who really care about Israel and you're not going to really appeal. I get it. But you've got a crowded field. You've got 6 other candidates. I'm hearing some beeping in the background. But if you got a crowded field, you stand out by taking a position that most Democrats support, which is, yeah, no, I don't support Israel. No, I'm not a Zionist at this point. All right, caller, you're on the air. Let me get you on. Who's calling?
Hello, it's Ari. Hi.
Hey, Ari, how you doing?
Doing okay, thank you.
Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. So what I was thinking is the one that's, I don't know if it's the, what do you call the elephant in the room. Everybody knows money plays such a big role, including lobby groups. So the Israeli, or let me say the, I guess you can call it the Israeli-American, like AIPAC, for example, lobby. These are playing a very major role. I'd like to hear what you think about this. There was a real good guest on the Nader show, Ralph Nader show. He has a podcast, and she explained a lot about the fact that it's not only AIPAC. There's a few others that are, together on this, and of course the objective is to protect Israeli things and that sort of thing. So it's not only the AIPAC, of course, but overall the money that goes into these lobby groups, I think it would be nice for the public to focus more on, and of course Rashida Tlaib, people that represent these issues that are more pro-Palestinian. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are, or if you bring a guest, like the gentleman you were talking about earlier, to talk about the role of lobby groups, in particular, as well as the money that goes into politics itself, just to become a senator, just to become a representative. There's so much money overall. And that's pretty much what comes to mind. Going to the root of the problem is saying, hey, that's enough of this money and lobby effect, because that's not representative of the American public. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll let you go, Ari. I guess you were done at that point, and 100%. I mean, everything you said, I agree with. I do think that politicians are terrified of scaring AIPAC, not because there are so many. And as you said, it's not just AIPAC. There are many other groups that are often affiliated with the American Israeli Political Action Committee, or they're offshoots of that. I use AIPAC kind of as a catch-all or umbrella term, but you're right. It's not just AIPAC. It's many other groups as well, and they have long tentacles. So agree with you there. I agree with you that it's that money and it's that fear of being targeted that keeps many Democrats silent or on the sidelines. I think that those points are exactly correct. I have said, similar things, so I agree with you. I mean, we're on the same page, no doubt about it. And yeah, at some point I should have on some guests. And I don't know, look, maybe this is totally unfair to Bastani. I don't know. I'm speculating here. It may well be that he truly supports Israel, or maybe he just really thinks, maybe he truly doesn't. Maybe he opposes support for Israel. This is not a state matter. I don't want to discuss it. I would just make the point, though, that I feel like if that is his theory, This doesn't relate to Virginia. This is a foreign policy. This is a foreign affairs matter. So I don't even want to talk about it. If that's his position, I think he should say that. He should come on there and say, you know, I'll be honest with you. These kind of resolutions support Israel, oppose Israel, that they have no place in Richmond. They have no place in the court, in the state house. We should be focusing in on making schools great in the Commonwealth. We should be focusing on building a better economy for all Virginians. This doesn't have a place in Richmond. You know, fine. Then say that if that's what you believe. I don't see anything wrong with saying that. I don't agree with it. But, you know, if that's your view and you believe that passionately, I would think you would be comfortable making that point. I think the real fear is you just don't want it. But also, even if you said that, even if you said, look, if you said, hey, look, I don't think we should be talking about this in the Virginia state legislature. I think this is pandering. This is pandering for the Israeli vote. I don't like it. If you said that, you'd piss off AIPAC and its supporters and its ilk. They would be like, no, 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 this is critically important. You're an anti-Semite. You're a Jew hater if you don't think this is important. I've seen plenty of people say that. It's like the old, if you're not an anti-racist, you're a racist. Well, it's the same. If you're not an anti-Semite, if you're not anti-Palestine, if you're not pro-Israel, then you hate Jews. You know, it's the same kind of stuff. All right. This story jumped out at me. I did want to just center the story for a moment. This guy, Alex, is it David? I was going to say Alex. Is Alex's father, or for some reason the name Alex Hogg is in my mind. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that. David Hogg, or Hogue, I guess he goes by. I think it used to be pronounced Hogg, but, you know, Hogg is not a real popular animal, maybe. I don't know. I don't have a problem with hogs myself, but so maybe he goes by Hogue. Parkland survivor and activist David Hogue speaks to a crowd there, March for Our Lives. He's kind of made a name for himself as a pro-gun control guy, which I support 100%. But he's also now the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. That's a pretty big shot office, right? I mean, he's a big mocker now in the Democratic Party. And this is news, right? Political coverage is news. An unprecedented move, DNC official to spend big to take down fellow Dems. Oh my God. Remember what AOC said? She told the Democratic caucus in the House, I won't even support primary challenges to Democrats if you'll just put me on that committee, if you'll just make me the ranking Dem, not even the chair, but the ranking, because they don't, not the majority, she couldn't be the chair. Just please, please, pretty please make me the ranking Dem on the House Oversight Committee. And I won't even support primary challenges to my fellow Democrats. That's how badly she wanted that office, right? And they still didn't give it to her. AOC think maybe you should try to go to another party instead of telling everyone how great Rafael Gallego. What is this for? Is it Rafael Gallego? Something Gallego. Maybe you shouldn't be telling everyone how great Gallego and Kelly are and Jared Golden when these people won't support you. Now, of course, the senators won anyway. Maybe Jared Golden in the House did vote. She said hey, I got a centrist like Jared Golden on Medicare for all, except he ain't. But okay, she said that. But she was prepared. I'm not going to primary. I won't primary anybody. But that's not what David Hogue says. He says, we'll spend big to take down fellow Dems. Now, with nothing more going on, I'm kind of good with that, right? I mean, unless, that's what we want. We want a Democratic Party that polices itself, that says, hey, if you're not for Medicare for all, if you're for funding genocide, if you take money from weapons manufacturers, then we don't support you, that we're going to support a primary challenge, a real progressive. That's what we want. Unfortunately, that's not what we got. That's not what David Hogue is saying. David Hogue isn't saying we will only support in the DNC, or at least my group, because he has this other group. I think it's called March for Our Lives, I believe, or something for our lives. No, he just wants you to. He wants to challenge ineffective incumbents, ones who aren't. And by the way, I know that looks really bad. Sorry, guys, I cut that off. I try not to do that, but can't always succeed. So his big deal, Hogue, isn't that we're going to challenge regressive, right-wing, pro-war, and pro-big pharma, pro-big for-profit healthcare. That's not the ones we're going after. We're just going after old ones who aren't really effective. And we're also going to only go after a few. There's going to be a limited number. And not only that, there's a real split in our in the DNC. For example, the chair does not agree. He doesn't believe we should be challenging incumbents. The money, I think, is coming from his March for Our Lives group, I believe, or some other group. But even the chair is not for that. He doesn't want to have some kind of litmus. There should be litmus tests. You shouldn't be a Democrat if you take money from for-profit healthcare companies. No, that's not a pro-people position. That's not a pro-life position. You shouldn't be a Democrat. You shouldn't be a Democrat if you take money from Lockheed Martin. And I'm not saying, okay, Raskin, you went to some Lockheed Martin sponsored event, so therefore you should recognize you're not a Democrat and you should withdraw from the party. No, the party itself should have ironclad rules that say, hey, we're not going to let you take money from or allow yourself to be used by military contractors, weapons manufacturers. We're not going to allow that. If you do that, we're going to primary you. We're going to withdraw our support for you. That's what they should be saying. But that's not what David Hogue is saying, and that's certainly not what Ken Martin is saying. No, Ken Martin, we have our good billionaires. They have their good So I was thinking about that. Remember what, I just want to play this. Remember what Joseph Guy Verghese said? I don't think there should be billionaires in the Democratic Party. That's what he said. That was his big statement. He, in fact, even here, the crowd is chanting billionaires out. But the big moment, DNC chair candidate Ken Martin steps in to shake hands with RF Chair Larry Cohen. This is the guy shaking hands with Cohen, the DNC RF representative, one of the two RF DNC members, RF board members who are on the DNC. There he is shaking hands with the guy who likes billionaires in the Democratic Party. So they're so excited because look. Okay, Larry's going up there. So they're chanting workers in, billionaires out. I mean, it's kind of, let's face it, pretty pathetic. But they're excited that the guy who won the election, or will win the election, is, who says he likes the Democratic billionaires. And he gets a hug. Larry gives him a hug. Wow. That's your progressive alternative. That's your progressive institution for you. The guy who just said, no, we shouldn't be primarying Dems, no matter how bad they are. So why, though? Why does Hogue, let's go back to Hogue for a minute. I'm just making the point, don't expect our revolution to champion progressivism. Don't expect it to take on the Democratic Party. Don't expect it to fight for you. Sadly, they see themselves in the belly of the beast, and I guess they like it there. as you could see from the hug Larry gave to billionaire ally and Democratic incumbent ally Ken Martin. Why, though? Why does Hogue say, no, we got to primary? Our base is craving dramatic change. We need to show our base we're here to fight for them. We need to show what? That we're fighting for Medicare for all. We're fighting against corruption in the party. No, we just need younger faces. Who cares if they're progressive faces? That doesn't matter. Doesn't, like, Mayor Pete, people call him Mayo Pete, I don't know. I never liked that expression. I never liked that nickname. But Mayor Pete looks really young. I don't think he's that young anymore, but he's kind of a young face. Is he the one we need stepping up? I mean, this is absurd. You know what this is? This is identity politics, only instead of saying, hey, if they're black or brown, or as AOC says, a waitress, then they must be on our side. So the fact that I think Clarence Thomas is a son of sharecroppers, and at last I checked is black, I guess under the AOC formulation, that would mean he's on the side of working people. I don't think so. Can we please stop with the ridiculous identity politics, with this nonsense that somehow if you're young or if you're you come from a working class background, or you are of color, or you're a woman, or you're trans, can we please stop equating those characteristics with being progressive? Because they're not. And Hogue, despite saying we need young people, but here's two that are getting challenged. Nancy Pelosi, who's been a force, one of the most... He won't challenge her. He won't primary challenge her when she's like the queen of the day traders. Somehow she's positive. Jan Schakowsky is delivering. What are they delivering? They're delivering profitable trades for their brokers, I guess. Or at least Pelosi is. I can't say that about Schakowsky. I don't know. So instead, what we're challenging are ineffective, asleep at the wheel Dems. So my last guess would be, what about Hakeem Jeffries? He said there's nothing we can do. Are you promoting a challenge to him? Because I didn't hear anything about that. I'll believe it when I see it. This is just you know what it is? It's just a distraction. It's just more sheepdogging. Hey, we're really doing something. We're really going to fight for you. We're going to put some younger faces in higher places. That's all. Final point, and then we'll move on. We'll be done. Oh, by the way, what did I say? Yeah, leaders we deserve. Is that the one? Is that that's his group? It's not. I guess it's not the gun control group. Leaders We Deserve, which Hogue co-founded in 23, announced plans to spend $20 million where? In safe blue Democratic primaries against sitting House members by supporting younger opponents. They will not back primary challenges in battleground districts because I want us to win the majority. This is insane. The way you win the majority is you absolutely challenge do-nothing, centrist, corporatist Democrats, because they're the reason you don't have a majority in the first place. And because in the end they lose. They may stave off for a session or two, a Congress or two. They may stave off a Republican challenge, but in the end they will lose. You want to win by focusing on bread and butter, progressive issues, by saying everybody in my district deserves Medicare for all, period, end of story. Every able-bodied person in this district deserves a fair job with a living wage. And if they can't work, if for whatever reason they're incapable of working, then we have an obligation as a society to make sure they're okay. That's how you win. You challenge these corporatist Dems in these battleground districts. That's how you win. Democratic Party ain't it. You know what? They like to win because they can raise more money if they win. They can position themselves for a golden parachute if they win. But you know what they want more than winning? They want to make sure that we don't create a truly just, truly fair society for every American where everyone has enough and no one has too much. And the reason the Democratic leadership, the Democratic establishment doesn't want that is because they have too much, because they have more than their share, because they're not prepared to pay their fair share. And if we had a just society, then their privileges would largely be gone. All right, I'll be back tomorrow. It will be the free-for-all. I want to thank Ari for calling. It's always great to hear from folks. We'll be back tomorrow for the free-for-all.